To the Point with Michael Williams.
The fire set recently at the Islamic Center of Fort Pierce puts the local mosque again in the spotlight as warnings are being raised not only here but nationwide about crimes against Muslims. Good morning and welcome. The fire at the mosque earlier this month received national and international attention, and not the first time the mosque has been the focus of attention. Joining me to discuss those topics, Wilfredo Ruiz. He is with the Council on American-Islamic Relations and serves as a spokesman for the mosque. Sir, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Michael, for hosting us.
First, give us an update on where we stand on repairs or the future for the mosque in terms of where services will be and whether you can rebuild there or will ultimately have to move.
Good. Thank you again for inviting me. This center suffers serious damages. However, this is if you have a chance to see an aerial view of the center, you will notice that it's like a series of 5 buildings. The main buildings, the worship center per se, were the place where you have the bathrooms, the place where you have the kitchen, and the place you gather for dining, all were directly affected by the fire, greatly affected. There's another building that was untouched and also had the particularity of having an independent electrical connection. And it is in that buildings, a lot smaller, where the community have arranged to do their prayers and their activities for now.
How many people attend the mosque regularly?
Yeah, and on the Friday congregational prayer, that's where Muslims congregate for prayer, like at noontime, normally a little over 100, so it is a small Islamic center if you compare them with the rest of the Islamic centers of Florida.
And it's been there how long?
Over 20 years, I've been told. And under the present board of directors, over 14 years.
And so bottom line here, you'll press ahead to repair and rebuild and continue services. It might be a little more cramped than you would like at times, but they'll continue on that site.
That's where all the communities is focusing their efforts, in the rebuilding, reconstructing. Obviously, a lot of financial resources needed. They roughly estimate they don't have a professional assessment yet, over $150,000 to fix the building.
The fire occurred about 2 weeks ago. 32-year-old Joseph Schreiber of Port St. Lucie in jail, awaiting trial, according to the allegations, and there was surveillance video, and authorities said came there, arrived on a motorcycle through some kind of accelerant, the mosque causing the fire. When they later looked at his social media pages, alleged anti-Islamic comments made by the suspect. Talk about, in the aftermath of all that, the sense of feedback you're getting from community support and your concern about that very kind of rhetoric and what it's helping to fuel.
What worries the community is not only the particular incident of the arson, is that this arson is part of a series of hate-filled events or hate crimes that went to as insignificant as a hate call to people being battered while going to prayer. A
man was beaten outside the Islamic Center in the summer.
And that ended up in somebody getting criminally processed. And this one, it is so grave that the federal jurisdiction is exploring accusing this individual in the federal courts as well.
How do we turn the temperature down, increase the communication between the Islamic and non-Islamic community, not only in Fort Pierce but nationwide, dial down the temperature, dial up the outreach and communication on both sides?
Yeah. You know, the general response of the community have been beautiful. We have received support from synagogues, from churches of various denominations, and just from peasants, the neighbors who have approached the Islamic Center's constituents just to offer them their financial help or even physical help to rebuild the center. The general reaction and the natural reaction of the Fort Pierce community and the neighborhood there is feeling first very disappointed of what happened in their community, because it's a small, otherwise unified community where almost everybody knows somebody else, and They feel all that this happened to all of them, not just for the Muslim community.
To your point about hate crimes, the New York Times came out with an article recently saying hate crimes against American Muslims have soared to their highest level since the aftermath of 9/11. Among the research they had done, the new study was based on official police reports 2015, so we're a year behind because the reporting has to come in, but estimated 260 hate crimes against Muslims nationwide in 2015. You're concerned, especially in a political season where this has become front and center, this whole discussion about immigration, about Muslims in America, about Donald Trump's comments that he thinks there should be at least a temporary ban on Muslims here. Again, with the rhetoric where it is, how do we dial it down? First your concerns, and then how do we deal with it?
First, Florida documented a 500% increase on hate crimes and hate incidents from 2014 to 2015, from 5 to close to 2030. Now, from January to July, we have reported over 22. So this year is going to be a record year for Muslims in Florida being targeted of hate incidents or hate crimes.
But how do we cope with it? There are those, perhaps some in our audience, and I want to be clear, a wide condemnation of an act of violence against members of our religious community, whatever their background of faith. It's been universal and justified condemnation. Aside from that issue, for the moment, and as you pointed out, the community coming together. The fact of the matter is you have a major political candidate who is saying, and many who agree with him saying, listen, right now, given the concerns about terrorism, we need to have at least a temporary ban on Muslims.
Certainly
what is your response to that argument?
Certainly the political rhetoric inflames the environment, empowers those people that normally belong in the margins of our society, those bigots, those racists normally are in the margins of our society because they're going to always exist.
If Donald Trump was sitting here right now, or those who support that view, who say out of terror concerns we should have a temporary ban on Muslims, what would you say in response?
That there are over 10,000 Muslims wearing the uniform protecting his democracy and his rights. There are thousands of other Muslims serving in the law enforcement capacity, being in the federal law enforcement or local law enforcement. And there...
We remember the Gold Star family at the summer convention.
That's just one example. And Muslims in general are more educated than the average American, and they are financially more empowered than the average American. So they do contribute in all aspects of society, as teachers, as professors, as first responders, as lawyers. There are many physicians. Some people estimate even close to 20% of physicians in America who are Muslims. So we're contributing in all aspects of the civic engagement on this community, and alienating Muslims does nothing but prejudice the whole fabric of our nation. Because if you start dividing, this person's or these people, because of the religious belief, don't belong to mainstream America, that's so dangerous, because that's contrary to the spirit of how and why our nation was created the way it is.
How do you assuage concerns among those? There is a history, unfortunate, as you all have said, but we had a case of a young man who went over, suicide bomber in Syria, Omar Mateen, the Orlando shooter. In both those cases, they, at least for a time, attended services at the Islamic Center of Fort Pierce. And so it can lead people to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? What do you say to assuage people who, justified or not in your mind, have concerns about that kind of thing?
It should appease our public the fact that the federal law enforcement agencies are fully immersed in communicating with the directors and the peasants of the Fort Pierce Islamic Center. And what they have received from our community is always full cooperation in their investigations, even to this day, when we have been a victim or when people have been suspicious. So we cannot doubt on the capacity of our intelligence law enforcement agencies who are doing their job and working very closely with the Muslims in that, not only in that community, in the whole state.
And again, some of the critics and some of the nasty rhetoric, which you've heard, is what's going on? What are they learning at these mosques from Fort Pierce to New York and beyond? What is your strong message to both the Muslim community here and the non-Muslim community as we speak about these incidents of violence and terror that have so rattled many in America and have helped create the stereotypes? Speak out to those issues, as you all have done before, about the violence and your condemnation of it.
I believe the public should be more worried of those people who don't go to the Islamic centers. Because in all Islamic centers, first, they're public. Anybody can come in, anybody can record, anybody can sit and watch. There's no Islamic center in the